All right, we're going to continue working in the field here, but show you, again, a different method, and this is going to be cutting in behind ourselves. So, again, the cut-in guy is still in control of the puddle, still in control of the cutting in, but now running the T-bar, instead of me padding out and worrying about taking out my own turn marks, I'm going to leave that up to the cut-in guy to do that behind. So what will happen is we'll take 2 or 3 passes, right, with me, and then he'll just continually work back and forth from each side of the room, getting down and cutting in behind to take those turn marks out of the floor. One other thing we'll look at is when you need to add more finish to the puddle, you want to pour it into the puddle. Always pour wet into wet. So if we needed to add more here, I don't want to pour out here. One, I create, too wide of a puddle to try to work with. And again, anytime I pour away from myself and I pour another little puddle, now I create the possibility that I'm going to get 2 lines solidifying on the edges of that puddle versus just pouring into my puddle and maintaining that one puddle. The other thing is whenever you set your applicators down, so again, if it's the T-bar, we always want to lay it down or set it up with it running in the direction of the grain. So even if I lay it on the floor, I want to lay it like that, right? With my cut-in pad, we can lay it this way, we can keep it in the wet finish, we can keep it off on the side. Because of the texture under there, it's not as critical that I lay it, in line with the grain, but definitely on the T-bar we want to do that. Okay, so we're going to get going, and Bob will cut in behind me.
As he's making a pass and we worked our way down through the job, you want to watch your puddle and see if there's any trash and debris. We cleaned the floor as well as we could, but as you carry in this puddle through the job, you're going to eventually pick up some debris. So I'm going to walk the line here before I pour some more and see if I can catch anything.
It's one of the reasons we want to carry a rag in our pocket, and usually just a little bit of a damp rag, even though it makes your pocket wet then, because the stuff, when you pull debris off, it tends to stick to something that's damp a little better than something that's dry. It's also a place where, if you need to, this is why you want to have coating shoes or slippers or boots, but sometimes you just stash it on the top of your boot or your shoe. If you don't have your rag or your rag's kind of filled up with stuff, you can just swipe it out of the puddle, wipe it on top of your shoe, and it's pretty much going to stay right there as well.
So when I'm taking his turns out, I want to make sure I use as much light as I can to kind of watch for the turn. And when you're feathering it out, you don't want to just do a hard stop. You want to feather out into the field, kind of mimicking his feather.
And sometimes in this method, again, as the T-bar guy, if I get too far ahead of my cut-in guy, I don't want to make him, reach out 5 or 6 feet and end up in the finish himself. So now it's almost up to me to help control it a little bit too, to make sure I don't get too far ahead of Bob so that he can help me out by cutting in behind. So now we're going to add a little more to the puddle, but again, we'll show you what our recommendation would be pour wet into wet, and don't pour it out away from your existing puddle. And then again, if you think you got a little too much in one place, I could reach out here, take that puddle, pour it back, pull it back in here, right? So it's a little more easy to work with out here in the main field. Plus, I know I'm always going to drag some from my ends outwards. Usually I end up kind of dry here. I can pad out. I can go ahead and then make my next run. And again, I'm kind of focused on the middle of this one board with the top of my applicator just to straighten out my line. Usually when you pour out new finish, it's a good time to do that. Well, let your tool do the work. I'm not pressing down on this, right? You press down on it, you're going to spread it too thin. So I am putting just a little pressure to move it forward, but I'm not making any cognizant effort to try to add extra pressure to it, because I want to get down the right amount of square footage of the finish on the floor. So I'll make a couple more passes. I'll let Bob cut in behind me. and we'll continue to work from there. One other thing you want to keep in mind when you got somebody cutting in behind you is, am I leaving them enough finish at the end if they need to grab a little bit and put it out into the area that I already covered? So again, don't drag all the finish away. You can always pull the puddle a little bit over to the side, leave him a little bit there, right? And then go ahead and make your pass up the floor.